All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank the media for joining us today and for members and stakeholders tuning in via Facebook. My name is David McKenna and I'm the chair of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, commonly known as TIAC. We are the national voice of the tourism industry and take action on behalf of Canadian tourism businesses advocating, promoting, and supporting policies, programs, and activities that will benefit the sector's growth and development. Before I start, I would like to first take a moment to acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home from coast to coast to coast. We extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Now, a few housekeeping items before we proceed. First, during the press conference, we will only be addressing media questions. For those watching on Facebook, we'll respond to your questions following this event. Secondly, presentations will be made in English. However, French questions are more than welcome by media during the Q&A portion. And finally, after our comments conclude, we ask media to raise their hand if they have a question. I will call on you in order, and you may direct your questions to any of the panelists today on today's call. If time allows, you will be invited to ask a follow-up question. Now, let us begin. We are here today launching a campaign calling on the government to plan for the reopening of the Canada-U.S. border. With me today are Scott Beck, CEO of Destination Toronto, who participated in the in-person media event just before this at Ripley's Aquarium with our president and CEO, Beth Potter, and representatives from our provincial and territorial tourism industry associations, including Chris Bloor, Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, Walt Judas, Tourism Industry Association of BC, Darren Reeder, Tourism Industry Association of Alberta, Merv Gunther, Tourism Industry Association of Manitoba, Jim Bentz, Hospitality Saskatchewan, Eric Paquette, Alliance de l'Industrie Touristique de Québec, Craig Foley, Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, Carol Alderdice, Tourism Industry Association of New Brunswick, Corin Clements, Tourism Industry Association of PEI, Blake Rogers, Tourism Industry Association of Yukon, and Kevin Kelly, Travel Nunavut. As you can see by the presence on the screen, we stand united as an industry, collectively representing over 225,000 businesses and millions of employees across this country. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Canada-U.S. border has been closed for over a year. The tourism industry was the first hit by the pandemic, the hardest hit, and will be the last to recover. The industry has been crushed, and we can't lose another summer tourist season. We are asking the federal, provincial, and territorial governments to work together on a plan to reopen. Medical experts are telling us that we're winning the battle with COVID, with vaccinations rising and cases going down. With this in mind, now is the time to pivot to more forward-thinking policies and reopen the border to end the extreme financial stress that has flattened the industry and devastated the tourism economy in Canada. Right now, the government is talking about decreasing the CEWS and CERS, Qs and CERS, key programs that help keep tourism businesses afloat for the past 15 months. If that is the case, then the border needs to reopen to allow for the tourism industry to have a chance at their own recovery. We can't have it both ways. If financial aid is going to decrease, then the border needs to reopen so that the businesses can go back to work and support themselves. Last week, the federal government's expert advisory panel on COVID-19 testing and screening released a report stating that there needs to be changes made to the border policy to reflect the progress we've made in vaccinations and fighting the pandemic. They specifically mentioned ending the hotel quarantine system because it is ineffective and not applied consistently. We know that the people have been able to fly to the US for vacation and not need to quarantine upon arrival. However, at the same time, only a limited number of essential workers can cross the border. It just doesn't make sense. The American officials have also been asking for a plan, and this is key, from President Biden after he took office to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Representative Brian Higgins. Yet Canada has not reciprocated and has been slow to make public progress. We are asking the government to take urgent action on the border situation because tourism operators and businesses need time to plan and prepare. There are staff to hire and train, and marketing products to develop to show that Canada is once again open for business. Many of our businesses rely on advanced bookings, and no one is booking here with this uncertainty. Tourism businesses and employees across this country have worked hard to ensure all products and experiences meet the proper health and hygiene regulations so that we can be ready. We are asking for the ability to plan. As we enter the second year of this global pandemic, we need to change the narrative on travel. Things have changed since the first cases of COVID-19 were reported in Canada. TIAC encourages the adoption of a one travel policy across Canada to avoid fragmentation of different policies and regulations per province and territory. We need consumer confidence to rebound. This will only be helped by confidence in Canada's travel policies moving forward. Canada needs to be a part of the seamless traveler experience. We must be engaged and aligned internationally with proof of vaccination vehicles and testing protocols for those that are not vaccinated, and coordinated in our approach to make sure that visitors feel safe and are encouraged to visit our country once again. We look to all levels of government to show leadership and guidance. In summary, we need a plan, and we need it now. I would now like to open the floor to questions. Please raise your hand and we will call on you. Please state your name, outlet, and question. And Beth Potter has joined us and will be able to field questions on behalf of TIAC. Thank you.
Geneviève Normand, please go ahead.
Oui, bonjour. Je pense que vous appelez ma collègue, mais c'est Estelle Côté de Radio-Canada qui est là au lieu de Geneviève Normand. Ma question est en français, donc j'imagine que c'est M. Paquet qui répond aux questions en français. Enfin, je vais vous laisser décider. Mais j'aimerais savoir qu'est-ce que vous attendez de la part du gouvernement fédéral quant à la réouverture des frontières?
Bonjour. Ça me fait plaisir de répondre à la question. Merci. En fait, nos attentes sont vraiment sur un plan de réouverture pour les frontières. Il faut comprendre que plus de la moitié, du moins pour le Québec, plus de la moitié des revenus proviennent des touristes hors Québec et plus du tiers proviennent des touristes internationaux. Donc, c'est vital pour le Québec et pour l'industrie canadienne en général que les frontières puissent réouvrir. Donc, un plan de réouverture des frontières avec des jalons, avec des éléments sur lesquels on peut évaluer comment on peut faire pour rouvrir les frontières.
J'ai deux petites sous-questions. J'aimerais savoir pourquoi on a besoin d'avoir une réouverture, un plan de réouverture rapide.
Ce qu'on souhaite, en fait, c'est qu'on nous donne la prévisibilité. Réouvrir les frontières, les touristes n'arriveront pas demain matin. Il va falloir se préparer pour accueillir les touristes. Donc, depuis 15 mois qu'on est en pandémie et qu'on nous donne une prévisibilité aux 2-3 mois, notamment avec les programmes de subvention salariale et les programmes d'aide au loyer. Donc, pour nous, ce qui est important vraiment, c'est d'avoir un plan de réouverture qui est raisonnable, qui est inspiré de d'autres plans qui se font à travers le monde et qu'on puisse se préparer à accueillir de nouveau les touristes au Canada.
Thank you very much. Bob Mallett, please go ahead.
Does Bob know he's still muted?
Sorry. wanted to ask about I think I'd get to this right now. I wanted to ask about documentation, vaccination passports. There seems to be a problem developing between Canada and the U.S. A number of states down there, Texas, the most recent, has passed legislation not allowing cruise ships particularly to require people to be fully vaccinated. How is the industry going to approach this issue? Because I think here in Canada, there's certainly a willingness to have travelers coming into the country if they're fully vaccinated.
So, Bob, the expert advisory panel made some recommendations on how travelers can travel going forward. Those that are fully vaccinated, those that are partially vaccinated, those that have immunity because they've had the virus already, those who have not been vaccinated, and those who are exempt. So they've outlined a real process on what that looks like coming into Canada. And fully vaccinated travelers would be able, by their recommendations, to cross the border, while partially vaccinated or non-vaccinated would require some testing. And that's something that the industry can get behind. We are at this point not advocating that business owners would take on the onus of testing or checking for levels of vaccine. That would be done at the port of entry.
Bob, do you have a follow-up question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Jean LaRoche, please.
Are we unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed that the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia is not represented. Is there a problem? Do they not agree with your position, or are they just MIA today?
We've been working very closely with the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia, and they just had another commitment today.
All right. And do you have a time frame for reopening? When should those borders between Canada and the rest of the world reopen?
Well, we'd like to see them open as soon as possible. We know that it will take some time to put necessary protocols in place. And we also know it takes some time for businesses to ramp up operations again, to rehire and retain staff. So, we're looking at potentially a 4-week time frame. It might have to be extended to 6, but what we're really asking for right now is what is that time frame so that we can begin to plan as an industry.
And briefly, and I'd like to hear from our New Brunswick and PEI representatives on this. One of the things you have called for as an association is kind of a harmonized set of rules coast to coast. But as you know, in our region, we're out of step with what's happening in New Brunswick and PEI. I wondered your thoughts on that and how that will affect the ability of the region to attract people to our area this summer.
I'll take that first. This is Carol Alderdice from TIAC. Our plan came out a couple of weeks ago, and we were obviously very excited because I believe we're hoping to go actually green with no restrictions starting August the 2nd if we get 75% of 2 doses. We were hoping to be able to work together as far as the deadlines being consistent across the way, but that didn't happen, and we're pleased with our plan. I'll let Corinne talk about the PEI plan.
Thank you, Carol. Certainly a challenge. I think we've all seen recently in the media with our reopening plans announced. Last year, we saw the Atlantic bubble as a cohesive unit. This year, our plans are somewhat different. From Prince Edward Island's perspective, we understand the challenges from the health capacity and if we have potential outbreaks and what that might look like. So we understand that those benchmarks on vaccination rates are key to our opening plan. And I do think it will have an impact. And I think we're seeing some of that now with the confusion. And we've certainly been working with TIAC and our counterparts across the country on what that cohesive plan is. I think not just for our operators to plan, but also for visitors who are looking to travel across the country. I think it's really important that we have some consistency in our plans to simplify that process and really enable people to travel.
And if you'll permit me one short snapper, and this is for the association as a whole, because our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Robert Strang, has said basically this is an opportunity for the industry to kind of retool itself and reimagine it itself. Is that even possible? Or do you really need this once cohesive set of rules across the country and a border reopening to be able to actually survive?
So there are some segments of our industry that have been very creative over the last 15 months in order to conduct as much business as they can under reduced capacity limits and ongoing restrictions. But there are just some parts of our industry that you can't put in a takeaway bag. You can't deliver, Banff and all of the great outdoor experiences online in the same way that you can experience it when you're there in person. So, have our industry gotten creative and have they retooled? Absolutely. But the experience of travel itself means going somewhere. And so we need to open the borders so that we can welcome guests to Canada so that they can experience these things firsthand.
Thank you so much.
Patty Handysides from CKLW in Windsor, please go ahead.
Hi, just wondering, I know that a lot of the border mayors have said they've been talking to the federal government and have been assured that reopening will come sooner than later, but it'll be in stages. What are your worries or concerns about it going in stages to be reopening the border?
I'm going to ask Chris from TIO to take this question. Chris?
Thanks, Beth. I think it's a really important question, but the focus of today's attention is about having a plan. That means whether we have a phased approach or whether it is simply a reopening of the border completely. And that's up for the government to decide and how they want to do that. But what we're asking as an industry that takes time to lead up, to prepare, to get reopened, is that we need that plan now, whether that is in 4 weeks or whether that's in 6 weeks, whether it's a partial plan or it's a full plan. Businesses need to be able to call their employees at home to tell them when they're likely to be coming back to work. Businesses need to be able to invest in marketing, to be able to attract people to come to their locations. And quite frankly, Americans right now are sitting at home planning where their vacations are going to be. And we need our border towns in Canada to be on their table, in their minds, of places that they need to go to or want to go to. And so that's why we're asking for the plan now. We're asking for the detail to be supplied by the federal government, but we need to let businesses know now so that customers can start making those decisions. And let's just be frank, any amount of tourists from America that we can get over the border now, whether that's completely vaccinated or whether a PCR test, will negate the need for some of the economic supports that are in place by the federal government right now. So if the federal government are going to start reducing those support programs, then we need to be able to bring people into the country safely so that they can visit our towns on the border like Niagara. So, any plan is better than no plan, and our businesses will be able to adapt to what those plans look like.
Okay, follow up. We went into this closing the border with, hand in hand with the United States. What are your thoughts on where they're at in opening the border if we have to both be in conjunction, opening it the same way at the same time?
So I'm happy to take that one. We have been engaged with our American counterparts as well as officials on the American side to talk about what their expectations are. And they're actually more eager to get the border open than even we are at this point. They're ready to welcome Canadians across the border. They want to come across the border themselves. So we heard from President Biden right after he took office. We've heard from Congressman Higgins, from Senator Schumer, that the American economy is ready to open borders to the international border to Canadians again. And certainly we've heard from congressmen, senators, and mayors on the American side of the border in those border towns that are looking for that that economic upswing of opening the border, that opening the borders will bring.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to Rebecca Howland from Brunswick News. Go ahead, Rebecca. Okay, we'll come back to you, Rebecca. We'll move on to Geneviève Normand.
Bonjour. Alors, question de suivi en français. En fait, je voulais savoir, puisque vous semblez faire un front commun pour lancer un message au gouvernement fédéral, aux gouvernements provinciaux et des territoires également. On sait qu'il y a certaines provinces qui sont un peu plus hésitantes à ouvrir les frontières aux touristes de l'étranger. On peut penser entre autres à l'Ontario. Est-ce qu'on peut penser que votre message aujourd'hui s'adresse surtout au gouvernement ontarien pour qu'il plie et accepte de négocier avec le fédéral pour aller de l'avant avec une réouverture des frontières?
Do you want me to answer, Beth, or? Good. Effectivement, dans la décision du gouvernement fédéral, devra sûrement avoir l'appui des provinces. On sait que certaines provinces ont déjà démontré d'ouverture pour justement rouvrir les frontières. Nous, ce qu'on dit, c'est qu'il y a moyen de rouvrir les frontières avec des outils qui existent comme des tests rapides. Il y a moyen d'établir des conditions gagnantes et sécuritaires pour permettre la réouverture des frontières. Et on a aussi interpellé le gouvernement fédéral de faire preuve de leadership avec les provinces pour les amener à cette étape-là de réouverture. Évidemment, tout ça doit se faire dans un contexte sécuritaire, évidemment, c'est ce qu'on a.
Autre question en français. Donc, je ne sais pas si ça va être encore vous, M. Paquet, qui va pouvoir répondre à celle-là. Si les États-Unis, eux, décident de rouvrir la frontière et que de notre côté, ça ne se fait pas en même temps, quels pourraient être les effets pour votre industrie?
Oui. Carol, est-ce que tu peux prendre cette question? Je pense qu'elle va être gelée.
Ah oui, bonjour, excusez-moi. Geneviève, votre question, c'est qu'est-ce qui seraient les résultats si les États-Unis ouvrent leur frontière à nous autres, puis nous autres, on ouvre pas notre frontière à eux autres? Est-ce que c'est ça?
Oui, je voulais savoir si les États-Unis ouvrent leurs frontières et que le Canada ne fait pas la même chose en même temps, quels pourraient être les effets pour l'industrie touristique au Canada?
Bien, ça serait pas une bonne situation parce que nous autres, on a besoin des touristes internationaux et des touristes des États-Unis pour venir pour cet été, cette saison estivale. Ça serait pas une bonne situation du tout. On voudrait certainement que les plans s'ouvrent, que les frontières ouvrent en même temps.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. We have a question for Beth from Lily Gurma at Skift. What is the estimated economic impact of the Canada-U.S. border not reopening for the summer season? what percentage of tourism operators or businesses do you believe could be at risk of closing for good?
Well, thank you for that. And the economic impact is that we would continue to see revenues in the tourism industry at a much declined rate. Prior to the pandemic, our industry represented $109 billion a year industry. Right now, we are averaging about 50% of that, but in some sectors, the devastation is actually 90 to 100% if businesses haven't been opened. And with the border closed, those businesses that rely up to 100% on US customers, they've already had one summer of zero revenue, and with borders closed, they'll see another summer of zero revenue. The industry is ready to welcome US visitors back, and we know that we've seen. Dave just shared with me that what US web searches of Canadian destinations is up 148% in the last 60 days. And that really does support the idea that the US are ready to travel to Canada again.
Thank you. Next question is from Rebecca Howland at Brunswick News. Is there much political support for this push to reopen the border?
So that's part of the reason that we are launching this website and this action today. We are launching a website, openuscanborder.ca. We're asking Canadians to write to their local elected officials to let them know that they're ready to welcome US visitors across the border again. We're hearing more and more from elected officials that they are ready to open the border, that conversations are happening between the federal government and the provinces, and this is all really good news. And we're so pleased that these conversations are happening. But what we need is a plan in the end. We need to see what the timeline looks like to reopen, so that the more than 225,000 businesses that make up our industry from coast to coast to coast can plan to be ready when the borders are open.
Thank you. We'll move back to Jean Laroche from CBC. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of short snappers. Is it the association's contention that the border should be open coast to coast?
Well, certainly we've heard about the idea of a phased-in approach, and our interpretation of that was phased based on levels of vaccine or levels of immunity. We have seen pilot programs work successfully earlier in the pandemic, but as we go forward, we would like to see the border open right across the country and at all ports of entry.
And could you talk a little bit about, and I don't know who wants to handle this one, why the industry feels it is safe now to reopen?
I'm going to ask Walt Judas from TIAC BC to chime in.
Well, really, it depends on what you're looking at. If you're talking about just the US border, when you see the level of vaccinations in the United States, and particularly those with a second vaccination, we are certainly ready to welcome Americans. And across the country, I can't speak for each province, but I know in British Columbia, we've got a high vaccination rate of first doses and are well down the path for second doses. But I think too, it's important to realize that tourism and hospitality businesses in particular have gone way over the top as far as health and safety measures they put in place to be sure that local residents, communities, their employees, people that are visiting, guests are safe. And I think with those health and safety measures in place, we feel confident that we're ready to welcome guests from beyond our own regions or even within our own province, that we can see internationals again at some point soon.
Merci.
Thank you, Geneviève Normand from Radio-Canada.
Rebonjour. J'aimerais revenir sur la l'hésitation, ou du moins la fermeture en ce moment de la part du gouvernement ontarien par rapport à cette possibilité de réouvrir la frontière. Comment pourriez-vous convaincre le gouvernement de Doug Ford de se rallier aux autres provinces pour aller de l'avant avec une réouverture des frontières?
Je vais essayer, d'accord. Je vais dire que Doug Ford commence à enlever les restrictions commence vendredi, et on voit que le plus que les personnes en Ontario voyagent pendant leur province, le plus confidents ils sont avec la notion de voyager. Et pendant que les autres provinces aussi enlèvent les restrictions, on voit que les Canadiens ont reçu aussi la confiance à voyager, et puis sont encore plus confiants à comment tu dis ça? Je suis désolée. Welcome les voyageurs des autres parts du pays, mais aussi d'autres pays aussi.
Est-ce que c'est possible de nous dire en français pourquoi, selon vous, en ce moment, il serait sécuritaire d'ouvrir la frontière aux touristes? Je ne sais pas si M. Paquet veut répondre à ce sujet-là.
Les taux c'est sécuritaire. Il existe, comme je disais tout à l'heure, il y a des gens qui sont vaccinés pour une première dose. Les taux sont élevés. Les Américains en sont à la deuxième dose aussi. Les taux sont assez élevés. Il y a des tests rapides qui existent. Il y a toutes sortes de formules qu'on peut mettre en place pour assurer la sécurité des voyageurs lorsqu'ils viennent au pays, notamment en Europe, où on a des déplacements entre différents pays. Donc, on peut s'inspirer de ce qui se fait déjà, avoir la conversation avec le gouvernement et qu'on puisse avoir ce plan de réouverture selon des conditions sécuritaires pour tout le monde.
Merci.
We'll go to Bob Mallett with Baxter Media. Go ahead, Bob. You're just on mute. There you go.
I wanted to clarify the timeline you were talking about, 4 to 6 weeks. Is that your timeline when you'd like a plan, or is that your timeline when you'd like the borders open?
I'm going to turn the question over to Darren Reeder from TIAC, Alberta.
Great, thank you, Beth. So again, I think depending on where you are in the country, some people are more ready to move to that immediacy than others. In Alberta's case, we expect to be moving to stage 3 and respond to our Premier's invitation for international visitors to return perhaps as early July. So from our perspective, the ability to have a plan in place ready to go for early summer is really consequential to saving summer. Again, for those that are on the call that aren't familiar with our industry, 2/3 to 3/4 of earnings are made in the months of May through September. So right now, a lost earning day has a 6-fold impact over any other time of the year that's not our core summer season. So this is key to saving summer, getting international back into the market. So the sooner the better for those markets that are ready to do it. Thank you.
So it'd be safe to say you need the plan by tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can I follow up? Because this is one of the things that bugs me. Everybody says, you know, you'll need some documentation to show that you were vaccinated. Well, I've got my first shot and I have a little piece of paper, like a piece of fax paper, which, you know, 3 months down the road, there's nothing going to be showing on it. So does TIAC have a sort of a plan or advice to authorities on what kind of documentation is going to be needed, or have we got to that point yet?
So for months, we have been engaged in conversations at the global table and to understand what is happening as far as, you know, proof of vaccination across our industry globally. We've encouraged the Canadian government to work with their colleagues in other countries to ensure that the system that they're devising is something that lines up with what is happening in other countries, so that we create a seamless traveler experience for all. We don't want to create confusion for travelers when they come to Canada by having something different. So we're encouraged to know that at the recent G7 meetings and at the bureaucratic level, that conversations are taking place with counterparts in other countries around exactly this. So so we know that the conversations and the work is in progress. We're just not sure exactly what it looks like yet.
Our last question for the session will be from Geneviève Normand at Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, j'aimerais savoir, justement, vous mentionnez le G7, la rencontre que Justin Trudeau va avoir avec ses homologues de plusieurs autres pays. Quels sont vos espoirs qu'est-ce que vous pensez que cette rencontre pourrait changer? En fait, quelles sont vos attentes de cette rencontre pour la réouverture possible des frontières? Est-ce que vous pensez que ça va jouer un rôle? Si oui, lequel?
J'espère que oui. Je sais que Madame Freeland avait des conférences avec ses counterparts aux États-Unis et des autres pays qui sont focus sur l'ouverture des frontières. Donc, j'espère que oui. J'espère que aussi le Premier ministre va avoir aussi des réunions au G7 qui vont aussi regarder et faire des partenaires avec les autres pays pour réouvrir les frontières internationales avec les autres pays et Canada.
Puis peut-être en conclusion, est-ce que c'est possible de nous préciser, est-ce que vous êtes en faveur d'un passeport vaccinal ou bien vous souhaitez une réouverture qui serait des frontières qui permettraient à la population en général de vacciner, peu importe leur niveau de vaccination? Est-ce que vous avez une position commune par rapport à ça?
Mais, notre position, c'est dépendant de le rapport de panneaux d'experts qui ont fait 5 recommandations pour les voyageurs de passer les frontières, s'ils sont vaccinés ou pas vaccinés ou partiellement vaccinés. Donc, je retourne le rapport des experts.
Okay. Well, thank you all, everyone. And I want to just thank the media and our great panelists here today, representing the Tourism Industry Association from coast to coast to coast. It's a very, very important launch, and we do appreciate your time and attention this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.